Hello everyone, and welcome to another video on the 2024 Monster Manual. In today's video, we are going to begin discussing cultists and the many stat blocks that are present in the 2024 Monster Manual. Because of the amount of cultist stat blocks, I have decided to split this into two separate videos. So today we are going to talk about part one of cultists, and we are going to begin with three specific stat blocks. And you'll see why once we begin talking about them. But cultists are Doomsayers and Fanatics. They use magic and extreme measures to spread radical beliefs. Some privately pursue esoteric secrets, while others form shadowy cabals seeking to bring about terrifying ends. Cultists often follow obscure mystical traditions or obsess over interpretations of ancient prophecies. They might worship supernatural patrons, deities, otherworldly creatures, manipulative alien minds, or stranger forces. And the 2024 Monster Manual gives us a table called the Occultist Agendas table to help dungeon masters come up with ideas for what a cultist group might be trying to achieve. So this table is a 1d6 table. Its options are: the cultist strives to bring about the end of a dominant order, an age, or the world. Burn away the comfortable lies of reality, revealing forgotten or terrible truths. Expand their faith through mind control or supernatural coercion. Make global changes like sinking the land or awakening volcanoes. Remake life on a mass scale, altering other creatures' bodies or spiritual beings. And finally, summon their deity or its herald, weapon, or realm into their world. So yeah, those are a number of agendas that a particular cultist might be after. But there's also a second table present in this section called occult symbols. So cultists often identify with symbols that exemplify their beliefs. Such symbols might mark objects important to the culture, as well as the dress and bodies of cultists themselves. These symbols might be broadly understandable, or they might have meaning only to cultists. We can roll twice on the cult symbols table to inspire a cult's icon. So yeah, this is a 1d10 table, which we roll on twice. We determine that the symbol is something, and then it is depicted as a particular thing. So yeah, there's quite a few options available here, but enough for you to get some pretty distinct options for every cult that you might want to design for your particular world. So with this particular information in mind, now we can actually get to the stat blocks. First off on our list, we are going to talk about the cultist. So this is a medium or small humanoid, which is neutral. They have an armor class of 12, an initiative of +1, 9 hit points, a speed of 30 feet. They have a strength of 11, a dexterity of 12, a constitution of 10, an intelligence of 10, a wisdom of 11, and a charisma of 10. They are also proficient in wisdom saving throws. For their skills, they have a deception +2, they have religion +2. For their gear, they have leather armor and a sickle. For senses, they have a passive perception of 10. Languages, they know common. And the cultist is a challenge rating 1/8 creature, which means it has 25 experience points and a proficiency bonus of +2. For its actions, the cultist has a ritual sickle. This is a melee attack roll +3 to hit, reach of 5 feet. On a hit, it deals 1d4 +1 slashing damage +1 necrotic damage. So yeah, some pretty interesting things in the stat block. So let's go ahead and talk about the changes from the 2014 cultist and the 2024 cultist, because there are some changes to mention. So first off, it is good to mention that the new version of the Cultist has proficiency in Wisdom saving throws. I believe the main decision for adding this proficiency in is that the Cultist no longer has a specific trait that it used to have called Dark Devotion. This granted it advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. And since many spells that apply the charmed or frightened condition involve a wisdom saving throw, the cultist now has proficiency in wisdom saving throws. So honestly, that change makes a lot of sense since they removed that particular trait. The gear section, of course, is entirely new to the stat block because it's new to 2024 design. So it's very apparent that the cultist has leather armor and a sickle that can be taken off of its person once they are defeated. Another change is that beforehand in 2014, in the languages section, it used to say any one language, usually common. They have just clarified. They've simplified this to where it is now just common. And then, of course, if you need the cultists to know any other languages, you could just give them additional language because that won't affect a stat block at all. But it makes perfect sense that the cultist needs to at least know common since every player character speaks common, so that just makes complete sense. Finally, the last change here is the ritual sickle. In 2014, the cultist had a scimitar attack, which dealt 1d6 plus 1 slashing damage. Now, the main changes here are, of course, since this is a ritual sickle, it deals the normal damage of a sickle, which is 1d4 plus 1, but it deals that additional 1 necrotic damage. So the average damage for the cultist is the same as the previous cultists, and honestly, there really aren't any changes that make any effect on the cultist challenge rating at all in this revision. But I do feel like the changes made make the cultist just a little bit easier to run. I feel like just giving it a wisdom saving throw proficiency is pretty nice. And then the ritual sickle is very flavorful. And if you really wanted to double down on this cultist and make it more flavorful towards a particular cult, in reality, all you could really do to modify the stat block is to change that necrotic damage for the ritual sickle into a different damage type to fit whatever otherworldly entity they are serving. So I feel like this is really friendly to dungeon masters who want to modify their stat blocks a little bit. So yeah, very, very much like these changes here. But next off, we're going to talk about the Cultist Fanatic. So the Cultist Fanatic is a medium or small humanoid of neutral alignment. They have an armor class of 13, an initiative of +2. They have 44 hit points. They have a speed of 30 feet. For ability scores, they have a strength of 11, dexterity of 14, constitution of 12, intelligence of 10, wisdom of 14, and charisma of 13. For their skills, they have a deception of +3, a persuasion of +3, and a religion of +2. For their gear, they have a holy symbol and leather armor. For senses, they have a passive perception of 12. Languages, they know common. And the Cultist Fanatic is a challenge rating 2 creature, which means it has 450 experience points and a proficiency bonus of +2. In its actions, the Cultist Fanatic has a Pact Blade. This is a melee attack roll with a +4 to hit and a reach of 5 feet. On a hit, it deals 1d8 plus 2 slashing damage plus 2d6 necrotic damage. For its spellcasting action, the cultist casts one of the following spells using Wisdom as the spellcasting ability, with a spell save DC of 12 and a +4 to hit with spell attacks. At will, it can cast Light and Thaumaturgy. Twice per day, it can cast Command, and then once per day, it can cast Hold Person. And finally, in the bonus action section, twice per day, the Cultist Fanatic can cast Spiritual Weapon using the same spellcasting ability as spellcasting. So, yeah, pretty interesting stat block here. So let's go ahead and discuss the changes from 2014 because there are quite a few to talk about. So, first off, the Cultist Fanatic is slightly different because the 2014 version was called the Cult Fanatic. Just to keep it more in line with the fact that these are cultists, they have modified the name to fit that. So, that's a small change, but it is a change to mention. Next, the 2024 Cultist Fanatic has slightly more hit points than the 2014 version. This 2024 Cultist Fanatic has 2 additional hit dice. So previously they had 33 hit points, and the new version now has 44. So they have gotten a significant hit point increase. In addition, the Cultist Fanatic has swapped its charisma and wisdom ability scores from its 2014 iteration, and has also gained that proficiency in wisdom saving throws. So those changes are prevalent both in the skills and the passive perception bonus there. Of course, I've talked about the addition of the gear section, so that is new for the stat block. And then languages used to be any one language, usually common, and they have now just simplified it to common. Next, in the action section, there are some pretty interesting changes here. Beforehand, the Cultist Fanatic had a multi-attack, which allowed it to make 2 melee attacks, and it had a dagger attack. Now, the Cultist Fanatic has no multi-attack, but it has this Pact Blade, which deals a significant amount of damage compared to the dagger that it previously had. So this Pact Blade deals an average of 13 damage on a hit, and beforehand, in 2014, the Cultist Fanatic could only hope to deal on average maybe 8 damage if it hit with both of its dagger attacks. So there is a damage increase here, but there is a more significant damage increase here because of that spiritual weapon being present. Although the spiritual weapon was present in 2014, it is now just relegated to a special bonus action. So they've switched where it is in the stat block, but honestly, there's still a lot of damage potential for this particular stat block because of its action attack with the Pact Blade and being able to use a bonus action to attack with the spiritual weapon. That's pretty significant, honestly. Next, there are some small changes to the spell casting action. It used to be in the trait section, of course, and has now moved into the actions. The spell save DC and plus to hit have gone up by 1 from 2014 because of that increase to wisdom. So that only makes sense. The Cultist Fanatic has also lost some spell casting options that previously had. These were in the form of Sacred Flame, Inflict Wounds, Shield of Faith. So those spells particularly have been removed. And honestly, they're not missing too much. If they really wanted to, they could have gave it a ranged attack to replace the Sacred Flame. But honestly, I don't see this Cultist Fanatic wanting to stay away from combat. I see them wanting to get into the nitty gritty of it and get into melee range since they have that Pact Blade. And if they really need a ranged option, they have that spiritual weapon on standby to reach out to anyone that may be out of their range. So yeah, some pretty good options here with the ability of casting command to halt people and then hold person to keep them in place. It's going to be fairly easy for the Cultist Fanatic to get into melee with player characters and beat the crap out of them with that Pact Blade, honestly, and their spiritual weapon in tandem. So it's almost like they have a multi-attack still in reality. Yeah, so there's some pretty significant changes to the Cultist Fanatic stat block, and honestly, I pretty like the direction that they took it. It feels very Warlock-esque with that Pact Blade, and so I really appreciate the changes that they've done here. Also, a very small mention here, but previously, before the 2024 Monster Manual was released, there was a version of this Cultist Fanatic that was present in a adventure that was released earlier before the Monster Manual came out, and that version had the Pack Blade deal 1d6 less necrotic damage, so they have seen a damage increase from that iteration, so that is pretty significant to mention as well. So yeah, a lot going on with this Cultist Fanatic. Last on our list, we need to talk about the Cultist Hierophant. This is an entirely new stat block. These are the leaders of cults, and that is why they are of a significant challenge rating. So let's go ahead and talk about this entirely new stat block. So the Cultist Hierophant is a medium or small humanoid of neutral alignment. They have an armor class of 16. They have a +8 to initiative. They have 144 hit points, a speed of 30 feet. They have a strength of 14, a dexterity of 18, a constitution of 18, an intelligence of 14, a wisdom of 16, and a charisma of 20. They also have proficiency in wisdom and charisma saving throws. For skills, they have perception of +7, persuasion of +9, and religion at +5. For their gear, they're wearing a breastplate and they have a holy symbol. For senses, they have a passive perception of 17. For languages, they know Celestial and Common. And the Cultist Hierophant is a challenge rating 10 cultist, which is quite significant. So they have 5,900 experience points and a proficiency bonus of +4. For their actions, the Hierophant has a multi-attack, allowing it to make 3 attacks using Pact Blade or Radiant Ray in any combination. The Pact Blade is a melee attack roll with a +9 to hit, a reach of 5 feet. It deals 2d6 +5 slashing damage plus 48 radiant damage. Radiant Ray is a ranged attack roll with a +9 to hit and a range of 120 feet, and it deals 4d12 +5 radiant damage. Finally, spell casting is an action allowing the cultist to cast one of the following spells using charisma as the spell casting ability. This has a spell save DC of 17. At will, they can cast Thaumaturgy, and once per day each, they can cast the Jalarzi's Storm of Radiance at level 7 and Mass Suggestion, which are pretty high level spells. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this stat block. I do want to make a quick mention that if you have the physical version of the 2024 Monster Manual, there is a typo in this stat block, and that is in the at-will spell section. They have mage armor included in AC in this section, and of course, if that was relevant, the Cultist Hierophant should have a armor class of 17, so there should be no need for it to have be wearing breastplate. So in the errata, they have removed this error from the stat blocks. They've just completely removed mage armor from the at-will section. So just completely ignore that if you have the physical book in hand and they haven't fixed it in your copy yet. So yeah, there's a lot going on in the stat block. I do like the way that these attacks are set up, because if I really wanted to, as a dungeon master, I could modify the stat block to make the Cultist Hierophant more of a death cultist character, or put it towards any other type of cult theme. So really the way that I would do that is I would just change the damage type from the Radiant Ray and the Pack Blade to a different damage type. So for Death Cultist, make it necrotic. For, let's say, an Aberration Cultist, make it psychic damage, and so on and so on. And honestly, that's a really easy change to do for this particular stat block. And you could also change the celestial language to make sense with that particular change. And as for Jalarzi Storm of Radiance, since it does deal radiant damage, you could just make a modified version of that spell that deals the other damage type rather than radiant damage. And yeah, pretty easy change to do here. But overall, I think the stat block is pretty decent. Has some decent AC, decent hit points, a very high initiative score, and it can deal some pretty impressive damage since it makes 3 attacks per turn. So yeah, there's a lot going on with this particular stat block, and don't really have any complaints about it, honestly. It's pretty good here. But that is going to be the end of part 1. You can see why I split this into 2 parts. In part 2, we will be talking about the Aberrant Cultist, the Death Cultist, the Elemental Cultist, and the Fiend Cultist, which are all entirely new stat blocks. So that's why I wanted to split these into these videos into these 2 different sections, because yeah, there is a distinction between these types of cultists, and I felt like it was more prevalent to put it into 2 different videos, since there are particularly so many of these as well. But yeah, that'll be in part 2, and that is coming out tomorrow, so just keep an eye out for that video at 8 o'clock Central in the morning. So yeah, that video will come out very soon, depending on when you're watching this video, or it could be out already. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Greatly appreciate your support on this series. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to give the video a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet. Just trying to build my base and cater to your guys's likes in these videos. And honestly, I like talking about monster stat blocks, and there's a lot of changes in the 2024 monster manual, so yeah, it's pretty important to go over every single stat block and just talk about them, because yeah, there's a lot going on here, and I like to share all these changes with you guys. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video, so thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all in part 2 of Cultists. So see you all in the next one. Peace.